Mom, I'm not coming back home. Looking back, it wasn't all the dramatic political events that changed everything, but a minuscule whisper. It was a 1 minute phone call, half of it was silence. But that's all it took for me, in the autumn of 2016, to become homeless.
You just heard author and journalist Ece Temelkuran reading from her new book, Nation of Strangers, just published here in France by Stock as Une Nation d'étrangers. Ece, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you mentioned in that passage that you just read that you'd effectively lost your home in Turkey, where you're from, but that loss was more complex than not just having somewhere to go and sleep at night. Can you explain why and how you lost your home, what that meant for you?
Well, I was a writer, a columnist, political columnist for, 20 years in Turkey. And then I was critical of the regime. And like many other people who were not supportive of the regime, I became a target. So like many other people, I had to leave the country in 2016 after the military coup attempt. And this is how I lost my home, my country. But then before losing the home and leaving the country, I think when you feel insecure in your own country, you feel already a little bit homeless, already a little bit stranger. And it started before that, I think, before 2016.
And in this book, you write that it's not necessarily a story you enjoy telling because there are so many different ways to perceive migrants, refugees, exiles, and many ways of being misunderstood, of presenting yourself as, you call it, Madame Exile. And often when a person has to move from one place to another, there's a shift in identity. How did that manifest itself for you?
Well, I moved to Zagreb and I started writing in English suddenly 10 years ago, right after leaving the country, and I wrote 3 books in English now. And it manifested itself in the eyes of the others. Oh, this, female writer, intellectual, coming from, land of the barbarians, taking refuge in the arms of civilization. And, you are expected to tell your exile story in a damsel in distress way. And that was quite bothering. This is one of the reasons I don't want to tell the story of how I left my country and so on, especially my personal story, and especially when there are so many other people in Turkey resisting and struggling. There's too much spotlight, I think, on that suffering part of that story, and I didn't want to be the victim.
And you mentioned language, how important it is, writing in English, that language that, as you point out, conflated strangers with barbarians until the 16th century, which I think is quite telling. What did this process of finding a new voice in a new language, it's a huge challenge, what did it reveal to you?
Well, it is, of course, it takes a lot from you. But then it was a painful time when I left the country. So I think I didn't want to feel. That's why I left my mother tongue and then I immigrated to English, because English is any other second language, actually, is the language of rationality. You pick and choose words. It's a mathematical process. So you don't really feel in that language. You don't taste the language. You don't feel the words. And I think I needed that period of cool-headedness. So English was the language that I wanted to write in. And also when I wrote How to Lose a Country, Como Perder un País, when, I needed to write in English to tell Europeans and Westerners that this is coming towards you as well, what had happened in Turkey. But now, with this book, Nation of Strangers, I'm feeling a little bit at home in English. I'm tasting the words, finally.
And playing with it, enjoying it a bit, I think, yeah. And you mentioned in your career as a journalist, you've covered political cover-ups, human rights violations. You've also written extensively about the fragility of democracies around the world in your previous books. One thing we do see authoritarian regimes do regularly is manipulate our perception of reality, those alternative facts that we hear about. But in theory, today, in 2026, we have opportunities to fact-check, to push back against that sort of thing. How do you see the health of truth?
Well, we are, as you very well know, living in a post-truth world. And many people think that it's about lies, it's about, double-checking and so on. But I think the main problem is that there is this endless, infinite, open buffet of truths. You can pick and choose. And I think we are in the age of believing rather than knowing. So everybody can believe in whatever they want. It's as if there's a free market of truths. And this is the problem. It creates a moral problem, crisis. It creates a political crisis, as we very well know. And it creates another, interesting emotional and moral crisis, which is shamelessness. You can believe in anything you want, even though that thing is immoral, even that thing is absolutely embarrassing. So it creates this lack of shame in public and in political life, I think, which we see a lot with Trump and with other far-right leaders.
And recently, going back to artists, the Golden Bear winning filmmaker İlker Çatak commented on artistic censorship, saying when regimes go after artists, they have good reason to do so because art can change minds. What do you think? Does art have this paradigm-shifting potential even in the face of something like fascism?
Yeah, because it can encourage you to dare against something impossible, for something impossible. But also, I think fascism is the ultimate ban on our urge to create beauty. We survive on our urge to create beauty. I'm not only talking about aesthetic beauty, but also moral and political beauty. And that urge to create beauty is stronger than anything, stronger than hope, stronger than, political conviction, moral conviction. And art encourages you to remember your urge to be beautiful as a human, as a political person, as a moral being, I think.
When you look back, were there works of art that made you feel understood or inspired at a formative age?
Formative age, yeah. I had a massive spine surgery when I was 15, and I remember reading Nikos Kazantzakis, the Zorba, Zorba the Greek. I think that, it kept me sane, that book. And I already knew I was going to be a writer, but it also taught me that literature can literally save your life in dark times, I think.
And you have said in the past, if the planet is our physical home, our spiritual home is art and language, something we've been practicing since prehistoric times.
Yeah.
How do you think artificial intelligence poses a threat to arts and language?
That's a great question. I love thinking and talking and writing about AI recently. Yeah, language is our spiritual home. And I'm talking about several homelessness in Nation of Strangers, and this is one of them. We are so used to thinking that language belongs to people, and we express ourselves, therefore we exist through language. But this is the first time in human history that language is also spoken by a unhuman entity. We are trying to get our head around it now. That's why I think we say please and thank you to an unhuman entity, even though we know that it's not, it doesn't ask us our kindness. And this is going to be really hard for humankind because they will constantly have to prove that they are more special than AI. And I don't know how they're going to prove that, because what are feelings if they are not the expression of them? So we're going to ask ourselves really profound questions in coming years. And these questions will not be about AI necessarily. It will be about what is human and what makes us special, or are we really special?
Not only homeless, but we've made ourselves sort of unemployed as humans. But going back to the book, despite the hardship and some of the really grueling ordeals that we learn about in Nation of Strangers, there is a great sense of community, of brother and sistership in your writing. What allows you to express that optimism, that hope?
Yeah, I mean, when I start the book, Mom, I'm not coming back home. It looks like it might sound like a sad book. It is not. There's a lot of humor in it, and I call it healing political nonfiction, because I think now intellectuals have the moral responsibility to make the reality, this incredibly difficult reality, manageable, livable for other people, and humor is a very good way to do that. And I learned how to face reality, hardcore reality, with humor from the refugees. The book is my personal story, perhaps, but also it's about other refugees that I met on the road in Hamburg, in Berlin, in several other countries. And they taught me how to live this reality. There is a certain joy of being in trouble together, I think. And humor is the great way to express that joy of sharing a crisis together. Yeah. And I think the world will have to understand this kind of humor very soon, because I think we will accept eventually that we are in a survival mode. All of us, all together, because of climate crisis, because of fascism, because of wars, you name it.
Great solidarity, but also some black humour as well. Now, finally, we asked what's on your cultural radar, and you pointed us in the direction of the new Peaky Blinders film after the hit TV series. This is an update on the life of Thomas Shelby, set during the Second World War. What do you like about it?
I didn't like the film. I'm so sorry. I'm a bit disappointed about the film, but the series I strongly recommend. I like the series, 2 reasons. Women characters are, immensely powerful. But more importantly, politically, I think it's one of those rare times that Britain acknowledged that there was fascism in Europe, not only in Germany. I think Europe has to face that fact about their, history, one. And also, I love the survival stories. Thomas Shelby is also a survivor. I watched those theories when I was writing How to Lose a Country, interestingly. So I was trying to survive myself 10 years ago when I left Turkey. So I think I empathize with Thomas Shelby.
An unexpected, inspiring figure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, a reminder that Nation of Strangers is currently available in English, French and many other languages. We'll leave you with a glimpse of Tommy Shelby's latest high-stakes escapades in the Peaky Blinders film The Immortal Man. Do join us next time here on Arts 24 and on our social media too. There's more news coming up just after this.
Your gypsy son is running the Peaky Blinders like it's 1919 all over again.
I can't help him, because I'm not that man.